Riley Carter was just another name on the warehouse roster, lifting boxes, clocking in, surviving one shift at a time. But everything changed the moment she looked up and saw the CEO plummeting from a collapsing catwalk. Without thinking, Riley lunged forward and caught Eleanor Vale, the most powerful and most untouchable person at Stratadyne Corp. The next day, Riley expected a pat on the back. Instead, lawyers arrived with a sleek black folder and a life-changing offer. Overnight, Riley vaulted from the warehouse floor to the executive suite, swept into a world of tailored power suits, corporate games, and enemies in expensive shoes. What starts as a thank you gift spirals into something bigger. A hidden mentorship, a brewing boardroom war, and a battle for control that could destroy the company from the inside. As Riley climbs higher, she realizes the real fall isn't from catwalks. It's from grace, trust, and loyalty. She saved Eleanor's life. Now she might be the only one who can save her legacy. This isn't just a story about catching a falling CEO. It's about what happens next, when the real danger begins after the fall. Buckle in, the ground is about to shake. The fluorescent lights of the warehouse hummed like a tired song, casting a pale artificial glow over towering stacks of cardboard boxes. Pallets were aligned like regimented soldiers, silent witnesses to the grind of another Monday. Forklifts beeped in the distance. Steel toes scraped concrete, and amidst the ballet of labor and logistics, Riley Carter adjusted her gloves, cracked her knuckles, and got to work. The 6 a.m. shift was never forgiving. The air was cold, the work brutal, and the pay was just enough to keep her lights on and ramen stocked. But Riley never complained, not out loud. That was just wasted breath. Complaining didn't lift boxes, it didn't move product, and it sure as hell didn't make the rent any cheaper. She was 27, lean from the job, tough from life, and perfectly aware that her dreams had long since been stuffed into the same boxes she stacked on pallets, taped shut and forgotten. She'd been at Stratadyne's South Side Distribution Center for almost 3 years. Long enough to know the rhythm, the shortcuts, the people, the lifers, the floaters, the ones like her who came in on time, did the work, and kept their heads down. Today, something felt off. There were more suits than usual in the loading bay, hovering like they didn't belong, and they didn't. Their shoes were too clean, their expressions too polite. They watched from the elevated walkway, scribbling notes and nodding as if observing a science experiment. Riley kept her head low, but noticed them watching everything, clipboards in hand, iPads flashing. That meant something big, probably a surprise audit or a PR sweep. Then she saw her, a woman with white blonde hair pulled into a sharp bun, dressed in an immaculate navy suit standing apart from the others. She wasn't scribbling notes. She was just watching. Cool and collected, with the stillness of someone used to being listened to without speaking. Riley recognized her from the internal newsletter, though she'd never seen her in person before. Eleanor Vale, CEO of Stratadyne Corp., the boss of all bosses. Riley felt a sudden itch between her shoulders, the kind that comes from being seen by someone who could end your job with a single sentence. But she looked away and went back to moving inventory. That was safer. Still, the air had changed. The suits were moving now, heading toward the metal catwalk that overlooked the central staging area. The platform wasn't used often, mostly by supervisors or maintenance, but it gave a good view of operations. Riley caught a glimpse of Eleanor stepping onto it, heels clicking against the grating. "Showtime," muttered Malik, her forklift operator partner, as he wheeled past. "Bet they'll post some fake teamwork videos later. Look how we support our employees." Riley snorted but kept her eyes on the scanner in her hand. Then came the sound, metal groaning, sharp, wrong. Everyone paused, looked up. The bolts anchoring the far end of the catwalk shuddered. Someone screamed. Eleanor stumbled backward, clutching the railing. A clipboard fell. Then the platform buckled. No time to think, no plan. Riley dropped her scanner and ran. The catwalk collapsed in a screech of steel and concrete dust. Suits shouted, some ran, but Riley was already there, sliding across the floor, arms out, adrenaline exploding through her like lightning. Eleanor fell, and Riley caught her. The CEO crashed into her like a meteor, knocking them both to the ground in a tangled heap of limbs and chaos. Riley's back slammed against the concrete, air knocked from her lungs. Her ears rang, her vision blurred, but she was alive. So was Eleanor. Silence. Then the warehouse erupted, shouts, running feet, cell phones snapping to record, emergency calls being made. But in the middle of it all, Eleanor Vale lay on Riley's chest, stunned, blinking at the ceiling. "You..." She started to speak, but her voice trembled. "You caught me." Riley blinked, barely able to speak through the pain blooming in her spine. "Guess I was on break," she rasped. And just like that, the world would never be the same. 2 hours earlier, Eleanor Vale sat in the back seat of her town car, scrolling through a tablet filled with quarterly projections and dull blue bar graphs. Her assistant, Glenn, babbled beside her about a regional safety audit, but she wasn't listening. Her mind wandered, dangerously so for a woman with as much power as she held. Stratodine Corp was doing fine, not spectacular, not revolutionary, just fine. And that was what bothered her. "Why are we even doing this warehouse visit again?" she asked, not looking up. "It was your idea," Glenn replied cautiously. "Visibility, transparency. Get your boots on the ground, you said." Eleanor raised a brow. "Did I say boots?" Glenn cleared his throat. "Not literally." Eleanor closed the tablet and stared out the window at the approaching gray box of the Southside Distribution Center. It was one of a dozen like it. Industrial, uninspired, efficient. Everything she hated and had built, all at once. Inside, she was greeted by middle managers and security staff who looked like they hadn't slept in days. Everyone smiled too wide, bowed too low, pointed too eagerly at spreadsheets printed on cheap paper. It was a dog and pony show, and Eleanor knew it. She let them lead her to the observation catwalk, nodding occasionally, but her thoughts had drifted again. Lately, she'd felt disconnected from the machine she had spent years building. She missed the risk, missed clarity. In the boardroom, power came with masks and maneuvering. She longed for something raw again, something human, and that's when she saw her. On the floor below, a woman moved with startling precision and strength, lifting a crate on her shoulder like it was second nature. Her form was perfect. Her focus is sharp. She didn't glance up at the visitors. She didn't show off. She just worked. Riley Carter, her badge read. Eleanor made a mental note of the name. She had no idea how that moment would define the rest of her life. Then the platform creaked. The screws popped like popcorn, one by one, quick and sharp. No one heard them at first except the maintenance tech 2 floors down, who shouted something unintelligible too late. The catwalk dipped to one side. Eleanor barely had time to react. Her body lurched forward as the structure gave way. The world tilted. Her heels slipped on the metal grating. For one surreal second, she was floating. The fall was fast, but the impact never came. Instead of steel and concrete, She landed on warmth, solid arms wrapped around her, cushioning the blow. There was pain, but not hers. Then, silence. She blinked. Her vision swam with dust motes and harsh light. A woman's face hovered above her, brow furrowed, mouth grimacing through pain. "You okay?" the voice asked, hoarse and breathless. Eleanor stared, confused. Her ribs ached, her wrist throbbed, but she was alive. She sat up slightly, eyes falling on the wreckage of the collapsed catwalk. Then back to the woman, her savior. "You caught me," Eleanor whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Riley gave a half laugh that sounded like it hurt. "Technically broke your fall, not the same thing." The warehouse had erupted. Phones were out, footage was already being uploaded. But in that chaos, Eleanor only saw Riley. Not just strong, but present, brave, grounded, unshaken. Paramedics arrived. Riley refused a stretcher even though she could barely walk. She sat on the bumper of an ambulance, sipping water and letting them check her vitals. Eleanor climbed in next to her, ignoring her assistant's pleas. "What's your name?" she asked. "Riley Carter." Eleanor studied her. "You work in receiving?" Riley nodded. 5 years. I lift heavy stuff and make sure it gets from point A to point B. You did more than that today. Riley gave a shrug, clearly uncomfortable with praise. Just right place, right time. Eleanor smiled faintly, something sparking behind her eyes. Or maybe the wrong place for everyone else, but it's exactly the right one for me. The video hit 3 million views by midnight. It had everything: suspense, danger, a high-profile CEO dangling over a certain injury, and a warehouse worker turning into a real-life superhero. Slow-motion clips of Riley catching Eleanor played on news channels. Hashtags like Catch of the Year and Warehouse Hero trended worldwide. Riley didn't sleep that night. Her phone exploded with messages, most of which she ignored. Friends she hadn't heard from in years popped up. Reporters camped outside her apartment, and the company issued a bland statement that thanked an employee for quick action during an unexpected incident. But by morning, things got weirder. When she arrived at the warehouse, the security guard stopped her at the gate. "You're not on the schedule today, Riley." "I wasn't planning to clock in, just checking on Malik and the others." "They said to tell you," he glanced at a note, "to wait in the lobby. Someone from the corporate is here to see you." Riley frowned. "Why?" "Didn't say, but they're dressed like they mean business." She found them waiting in a corner office, 2 women in navy suits and black-rimmed glasses. They rose when she entered and extended a heavy envelope. "Riley Carter?" one asked. "Yeah." "We represent Ms. Eleanor Vale. She asked us to deliver this personally." The envelope bore the Stratodine seal. It felt thick, heavy, legal. "What is it?" The taller woman smiled. "A contract and an offer." Riley stared at them, heart pounding. "What kind of offer?" The shorter woman's smile widened. "The kind that could change your life." The office was sterile, glass walls, abstract art, and the faint smell of lemon polish clinging to the air. Riley sat across from the 2 lawyers who seemed far too comfortable in their tailored suits. She hadn't said much since opening the envelope. The contract was written in dense legalese, but the essentials were simple. Stratodine was offering her a year-long consulting position at headquarters. 6 figures, full benefits. A corner office, no set responsibilities except to observe operations and advise where she saw fit. It read like a bribe dressed as a reward. "I think there's been a mistake," Riley said finally. I'm not a consultant. I don't even know what that means. You saved the CEO's life, said the taller woman, her voice crisp. This is Eleanor Vale's way of showing gratitude. Can't she just say thank you? She did, and now she wants to say it properly. The second lawyer chimed in more gently. You're not obligated to accept, but we recommend you review the terms with an advisor. There's no catch, just an opportunity. Riley left the office dazed, the contract folder pressed to her chest. It felt like walking out of one life and into the blurry edges of another. Her boots felt heavier. Her hoodie is more out of place. She called Dev the moment she got outside. You're kidding me, Dev said. A corporate Cinderella story? Please tell me they offered you a company car, too. It's weird, right? It's too much. Yeah, it's weird. It's also a blessing with a weird face. Come over tonight. I'll look it over. But Riley, his tone shifted. You might want to ask yourself, what do they get out of this? That night, they combed through the paperwork at Dev's kitchen table. Most of it was airtight. The language was careful. The job was vaguely defined, which made it risky, but not illegal. It gave Stratodine a glowing PR moment, and Eleanor a clear reason to keep Riley close. So what are you thinking? Dev asked. I'm thinking if I say no, I'll go back to shipping crates, and wondering if I should have said yes for the rest of my life. Dev raised his beer. To catch CEOs and the chaos that follows. Riley clinked his bottle, but her mind was already somewhere else, trying to imagine what came next. The next morning, she stepped through the glass doors of Stratodine's headquarters and immediately felt like an imposter. The marble floors gleamed like water. Everyone moved with purpose, eyes glued to tablets or whispering into sleek headsets. No one wore steel-toed boots or high-vis vests. Riley felt like she was breaking some invisible dress code just by being there. A receptionist directed her to the 12th floor, where she was met not by another lawyer, but by Eleanor Vale herself. You came, Eleanor said, offering a smile that was half surprise, half satisfaction. I thought I should deliver my signature in person. Eleanor nodded, gesturing toward a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a skyline view. Let me show you your office first. The space was ridiculous. Modern furniture, soft lighting, a coffee station in the corner, and a view that made the city look like a miniature. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do here, Riley admitted. You'll learn. Eleanor leaned against the desk, hands folded. You caught me, Riley. That's more than most people in this building have ever done, and more than any of them would have dared to try. I just moved fast. Anyone would have done it. No, they wouldn't have. The honesty in Eleanor's voice caught Riley off guard. The CEO looked at her not with superiority, but curiosity. I don't expect miracles, Eleanor said, but I see potential, and I won't waste my potential. Riley studied her, trying to read what lay behind the words. It felt like a test, though she couldn't see the boundaries. All right, she said slowly. I'm in, but I don't know your world. Good, Eleanor said. That means you'll see what others don't. And just like that, Riley's new life began, one floor above the chaos, in a world built on glass, power, and unspoken games. Riley spent her first official week trying not to drown. Her calendar was filled with meetings she didn't understand. Acronyms flew through the air like confetti. KPIs, EBITDA, QBRs. It was another language. Everyone spoke it fluently, except her. But she listened. She watched how people behaved around Eleanor. Some smiled too quickly, others avoided her gaze. The hierarchy was clear and rigid. What surprised Riley most was how little honesty flowed upward. She began keeping notes, not just on what was said, but what wasn't. Who spoke over whom? Who got credit? Who deflected blame? She watched one junior exec take credit for an idea his intern had voiced 10 minutes earlier. Another VP presented a logistics solution Riley recognized from her old warehouse crew's suggestions, ideas they'd been laughed at for. It started to click. Eleanor watched her closely during these meetings, not obtrusively, just aware, like she was taking her own mental notes on how Riley processed things. They didn't talk much, but every glance felt loaded with meaning. At the end of the week, Eleanor called her into a private office on the executive floor. "I want your thoughts," she said simply. "On what?" "Everything." Riley blinked. "You mean just speak freely?" "That's the point. You're not here to play the game, Riley. You're here to tell me what's real." Riley looked around. What if what's real is that a lot of this is nonsense? Eleanor smiled, slow and sharp. "Then you're exactly who I thought you were." For the first time, Riley felt something shift, not just in her job, but in herself. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was being asked to lead, to challenge, to see, and suddenly that corner office didn't feel so out of place. Riley stood in the middle of the elevator, watching the floor numbers climb. Each ding felt like a countdown, not to something bad, but something irreversible. It was her second Monday at Stratadine HQ, and she had a new wardrobe, new badge, and a new office. Yet somehow she felt like she still didn't belong. The building's top floor was a world apart from the one she used to know. Here people gilded more than walked. Suits were tailored to intimidate. Coffee was artisanal, not burnt. Conversations were coded in politeness but meant to size you up. Riley didn't know the rules, but she was quickly learning that honesty was rare and authenticity even rarer. She passed by two executives chatting near a digital wall display. As she walked by, their conversation slowed and shifted, like radio static fading just before a commercial break. That happened more and more. Inside her office, she found a man already waiting, mid-40s, stiff posture, hands folded like a vice. "Ms. Carter," he asked, rising. "I'm Julian Crane, VP of Internal Operations. Eleanor mentioned you'd be shadowing some of the departments this week." "That's the plan," Riley said. "Guess you're first." Julian nodded. "We'll start with logistics." Their tour was efficient, cold, even. Julian moved through Stratadine's polished operations floor like a museum guide, enthusiastic for the presentation, indifferent to the human parts. Riley noticed things he didn't point out. Workers stationed too long without breaks, tension between floor supervisors and remote managers, a woman hiding tears in a break room. Riley jotted everything in her notebook. Julian noticed. "You're quite observant." "I used to be down there," she said. "Hard to unsee how things really work." "Don't mistake empathy for strategy," he replied coolly. "The company runs on performance, not sentiment." That stuck with her all day. Back in her office, Riley stared out the window. Somewhere far below, people were clocking out, heading to second jobs, fighting traffic, picking up kids. Up here, people talked about quarterly culture realignment, like it meant something, but culture didn't live in a memo. It lived in how people were treated when no one was watching. The door opened. Eleanor walked in without knocking. "I saw Julian's notes," she said. "He gave me the PR tour." "And your version?" Riley handed her a page. "Here, unfiltered." Eleanor read silently, one brow arching slightly. "You're dangerous," she said, not unkindly. Riley gave a dry smile. "Only if ignored." Eleanor didn't argue. She just folded the page neatly and tucked it into her blazer. Then she turned and walked out. It was the first time Riley felt like she'd punched through the glass, not broken it, but cracked it just enough for light to get through. Riley arrived early the next day, needing the quiet before the office filled with practiced smiles and caffeine-fueled agendas. She brought coffee, 2 cups, one for herself, one for Eleanor. They didn't have a formal morning ritual, but something about the gesture felt right. Eleanor was already at her desk, reading what looked like a performance review file. She didn't look up as Riley entered. "Let me guess," she said. "Crane thinks you're disruptive." "Wasn't trying to be. That's what makes it worse for them." Riley set the coffee on her desk. Eleanor took it without thanks, but with a glance that said she noticed. "What's this meeting I'm shadowing today?" Riley asked. "Employee Review Panel. Every quarter we review 10 cases, discipline, promotions, exits. You'll be my second chair." "Do I get a chair?" "You'll earn it in 5 minutes or not at all." The panel took place in a smaller boardroom with 6 executives arranged like a jury. Riley felt every eye on her as she took a seat beside Eleanor, who didn't introduce her. The first case was a warehouse supervisor, 10 years of service, spotless record, but allegedly insubordinate after rejecting an overtime request without proper notice. Riley read the report and frowned. He declined a shift that would have put him over the OSHA limit. That's not insubordination, that's compliance. The room went quiet. One of the HR reps cleared his throat. "Technically, yes, but—" "Then why are we punishing someone for following safety law?" Riley asked. Eleanor didn't stop her. She watched. In case after case, Riley asked uncomfortable questions, pointed out bias, challenged protocol, not to grandstand, but because she knew what it felt like to be the worker on the other end of those decisions. After the meeting, one exec pulled Eleanor aside. Riley could hear the whispering. "She's not trained for this." "She doesn't need to be," Eleanor replied. "She's undermining the system." "No," Eleanor said. "She's finally holding it accountable." When they returned to Eleanor's office, she didn't offer praise, just handed Riley a folder. "What's this?" "Your first solo task." Inside, a case file on a middle manager with a habit of suppressing worker complaints. The last page had a post-it. "Tell me what to do. EV." Riley read it twice. Then she smiled. Malik was the first familiar face Riley had seen in weeks, and the only one who didn't treat her like a living press release. She met him after hours outside the same warehouse where this all started. It was strange seeing it again from the outside. "You really traded steel boots for high heels," Malik said, eyeing her slacks and blazer. "Don't get used to it," Riley said. "They're hell on your arches." He grinned and handed her a coffee. "You're famous around here, you know." "Yeah, for what?" "Half think you saved the boss. Half think you joined the dark side." She took a long sip. "Maybe both are true." They stood in silence for a moment, watching workers file out of the warehouse gates, like ghosts from her old life. "Have you ever thought about coming back?" Malik asked. "I never left," she said. "I just see it from a different angle now." She told him about the internal case, the bad manager, the promotion that didn't smell right. He listened, nodding slowly. "You gonna fix it?" "I'm gonna try." "You'll make enemies." "I already have." He gave her a look, half warning, half admiration. "Don't forget where you came from, Riley." She met his eyes. "That's the one thing I promise I never will." As she walked back to her car, she felt the contract in her bag, like a second spine. Every page a new weapon. Every word is a decision. She had stepped into the fire, and now she was learning to control the heat. Riley sat across from Eleanor in a private conference room, the case file of Drew Hanley, the mid-level manager under scrutiny, spread out in front of them like a crime scene. The evidence was subtle but undeniable. Emails dodging HR protocol, passive-aggressive memos silencing worker complaints, mysteriously dropped reports. Nothing overt. Just enough plausible deniability to let rot fester. "Do you know how many people have flagged him?" Riley asked. "4 in the last 2 quarters, Eleanor replied, but none of them stuck. Hanley knows the system. He plays politely. Manage up, step down. Someone like that can corrode a whole department, which is why I gave the file to you." Riley tapped her pen on the table. "If I recommend termination, the board might ask why a consultant is overstepping HR. That's the game, Riley. You're not a consultant. You're a mirror. Show them what they refuse to see." She took the weekend to investigate. Riley reached out to people who had filed anonymous complaints, using her name as a shield. Some opened up, others hesitated. One, a shipping coordinator named Lizette, agreed to meet her in a diner off campus. She looked nervous, glancing at the door every few minutes. "Hanley makes you feel like you're crazy," she said, stirring cold coffee. "He never yells, he just watches, corrects you in emails, make jokes at your expense in meetings. You stop talking. You start second-guessing everything." "Did you ever escalate to HR?" "I tried. They said it was unsubstantiated." Riley's jaw tightened. "You've got courage, Lizette. Speaking up isn't small." Lizette smiled for the first time. "You did too. And you're not one of them. You still move like us." Riley went straight to Eleanor the next day. "Terminate Hanley," she said without ceremony. "Do it clean, do it fast, and promote Lizette. She's got better instincts than half your managers." Eleanor didn't blink. "Are you ready for the backlash?" "Let it come." Within 24 hours, Hanley was gone. No ceremony, no memo, just erased. Riley could feel the ripple in the office, the shock, the whispers, but also the quiet relief. A parasite had been cut out, and even the cells didn't know they were sick until the toxin was gone. And Lizette? She walked into the executive floor with eyes wide and spine straight. Her name newly embossed on a desk plate Riley had insisted on herself. That night, Eleanor poured 2 glasses of scotch in her office and handed one to Riley. "Most people talk about change," she said. "You just made it happen." Riley held up her glass. "Not for show, for survival." They clinked glasses. The fire had been lit. The days blurred after that. Riley wasn't shadowing anymore. She was making moves, quietly influencing real outcomes. Some staff called her the fixer. Others muttered CEO's pet under their breath. She heard it all. She didn't care. Results were louder than gossip. One morning she stepped off the elevator and the air felt different, tight, charged. Her inbox was full of forwarded messages with bold subject lines. Leaks. Someone had released an internal memo outlining executive bonuses and performance discrepancies across departments. It looked bad, especially when juxtaposed with recent cost-cutting measures and a hiring freeze. Riley stormed into Eleanor's office without knocking. "You've seen it?" she asked. "Of course I've seen it," Eleanor said, calmly closing her laptop. "Then tell me what we're doing. This thing is spreading like wildfire. People are angry. They think you're hoarding bonuses while freezing wages, which isn't true. Doesn't matter. Perception's already formed. We either control the narrative or let it drown us. Eleanor tilted her head. So what's your play? Riley took a deep breath. We go transparent, real numbers, context, publish executive performance scores, not just payouts, show where the value was delivered, acknowledge the optics, then launch a discretionary worker bonus funded by voluntary exec rollbacks. You think the board will agree to that? No, that's why you don't ask. You tell me. Eleanor studied her like a mathematician testing a proof. You realize this makes you a threat to a lot of people. Good. It means I'm working. By afternoon, Riley's plan was already in motion. Eleanor held a town hall live stream. For the first time, employees heard candid answers, acknowledgement, not spin, strategy, not excuses. By evening, a Slack channel named "And Thanks Riley" quietly appeared. Dozens of employees posted short notes, not gratitude for a raise, gratitude for being seen. Eleanor didn't mention it. She didn't need to. When she passed Riley in the hallway that night, she simply said, "Well played." Riley smiled. Game's just starting. The backlash came fast. 2 board members scheduled and unscheduled review of Eleanor's leadership practices. Internal whispers pointed fingers. An anonymous op-ed in a business journal questioned the wisdom of elevating a warehouse worker into executive circles. And Riley received her first real threat in the form of a single white envelope left on her desk. No name, just a message. Stay in your lane or lose everything. She didn't tell Eleanor, not right away. Instead, she called Dev. They're trying to scare you, he said. Classic tactic. Keep the outsider afraid of the game. Well, I'm not afraid, I'm pissed. Then use it, but be smart. The next day, Riley walked into the boardroom for a meeting she wasn't invited to. Heads turned, conversations stopped. I'm here as part of Eleanor's executive advisory program, she said smoothly. Her calendar had this meeting blocked. I assume you're not excluding a strategy partner. They let her stay, reluctantly. The meeting was about optics and public messaging, but Riley knew better. It was about laying the groundwork to isolate Eleanor, to clip her wings before she flew too far. Afterward, Eleanor pulled her into a side office. I told you you'd make enemies, she said. Didn't realize they'd be wearing silk ties and fake smiles. They'll come for you next. Let them. Eleanor leaned closer. You've got more fire than I expected. I've been standing in the cold for years, Riley replied. I know how to keep it burning. That night, Riley finally opened the anonymous envelope again. She stared at the words and made a decision. She took out a pen and wrote one line across the bottom, "Watch me." Then she slipped it into her drawer, not as evidence, as fuel. The email came from Eleanor late Sunday night. Just 2 words, loyalty test. No explanation, no attachment. But Riley didn't need one. Monday morning, a discreet envelope was handed to her at reception by someone she didn't recognize. Inside were a series of flagged communications, internal messages between upper-level managers and department heads hinting at a brewing insurrection, a movement, carefully worded but clear in intent. Eleanor was being scrutinized not just by the board, but by her own team. The central figure, Arthur Blaine, VP of Strategic Risk. Always pleasant in meetings, always the first to praise Riley publicly. Always, now she realized, watching her far too closely. Eleanor had marked 3 dates. Times when Arthur had been copied on internal discussions that mysteriously leaked just days later. There were no direct links, no smoking gun, just breadcrumbs. So Riley played it slow. She started shadowing Arthur under the guise of cross-functional learning, asked smart questions, let him think he was training her. He seemed eager to groom her, dropping casual references to how some of us think the company needs new direction. He was testing the waters, feeling her out. Riley let him talk. She was quiet, agreeable, mirroring his energy, nodding along. She recorded everything. On the third day, Arthur mentioned a private strategy dinner, off campus, discreet. People with vision, he said. People who don't believe in nostalgia-driven leadership. He didn't say Eleanor's name. He didn't need to. That night, Riley gave Eleanor the recording. She didn't speak while listening, just leaned back, eyes closed, fingers steepled. "He thinks he's a kingmaker," Eleanor said at last. "He thinks I want the crown," Riley replied. "And do you?" Riley paused. "Not yet." Eleanor opened a drawer, pulled out a sealed envelope. "Deliver this to him tomorrow morning, personally." Riley didn't ask what was inside, just nodded. The next day, Arthur opened the envelope while she stood in his doorway. He didn't speak. His expression didn't shift, but something in his eyes cracked briefly. He folded the paper, placed it on his desk, and nodded to her once. By noon, an internal memo circulated. Arthur Blaine had resigned to pursue personal opportunities. There was no applause, no speech, just an empty office with a fresh layer of silence. Later, Riley found a sticky note on her desk in Eleanor's handwriting. "Loyalty confirmed, fire retained." It had been a while since Riley had walked through the warehouse without an escort. She did it deliberately, no announcement, no warning, just a quiet return through the back employee entrance. The break room had changed. Cleaner, maybe, brighter lighting, the same coffee machine still broken in the same way. But the people were different now, not because they'd changed, but because Riley had. Some greeted her with awe, others with cool distance. A few acted like they didn't know her at all. That hurt more than she expected. She found Malik in receiving, loading a pallet onto a forklift. "Back to slum it with the rest of us?" he joked, but without the usual warmth. "I never left," she said. "Could have fooled us. Whole place went through a shift audit 2 weeks ago. Hours got cut. People are blaming management. People are blaming you." Riley frowned. "That wasn't me." "Doesn't matter. You're one of them now. Anything that happens at the top trickles down with your name on it." That night, she requested every labor and scheduling report tied to the warehouse division. It wasn't hard to trace. The cuts had come from a new efficiency model, approved automatically by middle management. No oversight, no warnings. The system had flagged non-critical shifts and eliminated them using a predictive metric written by someone who'd never stepped on a warehouse floor. The next morning, Riley called a meeting with HR and logistics. She showed them the model, showed them the real-world fallout, then killed it. But that wasn't enough. She scheduled a listening session in the break room. No suits, no cameras, just her and whoever wanted to speak. Dozens came, some with anger, some with hope, most with stories about policies that never included the people they impacted. Riley didn't speak much. She just wrote it all down. Later, she posted a notice on the warehouse bulletin. "Starting next week, worker-led advisory panel, equal voice, equal vote. Change begins with us." The next day, Malik passed her in the hall and gave a short nod. No words, but it said everything. 3 days later, Riley stood before the executive team with a stack of paper in her hands. Worker survey results, feedback logs, cost-saving proposals from the warehouse advisory panel. She had given them structure, a pipeline, and a reason to be heard. And now she was going to make them impossible to ignore. Every dollar we saved through automation came with a cost, Riley said, projecting charts behind her. Not in equipment, in people. Morale is bleeding, retention is at risk. Our efficiency is cannibalizing our culture. Some execs shifted uncomfortably, others stared flatly. Only Eleanor looked interested. "So what's your proposal?" asked Julia Park, head of operations. Riley lifted a second folder. Profit sharing, but tied to frontline innovation. Laughter, then silence. "Do you want warehouse workers proposing process changes?" one man scoffed. "They already do. We just don't listen." Eleanor sat forward. "Explain the model." Riley laid it out. Every quarter, the advisory panel would nominate 3 cost-saving ideas. If approved and implemented, frontline workers would receive a percentage of the savings, direct to their paycheck. Transparency built in, recognition mandatory. Julia narrowed her eyes. "This sets a precedent." "Do people who build value share in it?" Riley shot back. "That's not a precedent, that's justice." Afterward, Eleanor found her in the stairwell, away from eyes and ears. "You're going to change this company." Riley leaned against the rail. "Not alone, I won't." Eleanor smiled. "You're not alone anymore." For the first time, Riley believed that might actually be true. The memo leaked on a Wednesday. It wasn't a particularly damning document at first glance, just a routine email outlining a departmental reorganization in procurement, but buried within were 2 phrases that set the company buzzing: anticipated executive realignment and external consultant advisory review. The implication was clear: something big was coming, and fingers were already pointing at Riley. She found out in the elevator. Julia Park forwarded the memo with no subject line and just one sentence in the body. "Was this you?" Riley's stomach dropped. She hadn't even seen the memo before that moment. In Eleanor's office, the air was colder than usual. "Do you trust me?" Riley asked, standing at the threshold. Eleanor didn't look up from her screen. "Do I need to?" "You're wondering if I leaked that memo." "I'm wondering why my name is on something I didn't approve." Riley took a breath. "I didn't send that out, but I'll find out who did." Eleanor finally met her eyes. "Do it quickly, because if the board thinks I've lost control of my own floor, they'll make their move, and this time they'll come at both of us." Riley left with fire in her chest and a target on her back. She started with IT logs, messages, distribution reports. She wasn't technically authorized to access them, but Dev was. And when she called him, he didn't ask why. He just said, "Where do you want me to look?" Within hours, they traced the email's metadata to a terminal registered to an executive assistant on the 14th floor. A junior, clean record, but the trail didn't end there. It led to a name Riley hadn't heard in weeks: Arthur Blaine. He was supposed to be gone. The trail of Arthur's sabotage wasn't straightforward. He hadn't sent the leak directly. He'd used a proxy. The assistant, Naomi, had no idea she was being used. She thought she was forwarding a briefing to a board subcommittee, under the assumption that it was part of Arthur's transition documentation. Riley confronted her gently. She wasn't angry. Naomi was just a pawn, but the revelation confirmed something Eleanor had long suspected. Arthur hadn't gone quietly. He'd stayed close through proxies and favors, laying traps, whispering doubt into receptive ears. Riley delivered the findings to Eleanor, expecting cold satisfaction. Instead, Eleanor looked tired. "Of course he didn't leave," she said. "Men like Arthur never walk away from power. They just change masks." "What do? "We clean the house." A meeting was called that evening, private, off books, just Eleanor, Riley, and a select few who had proven their loyalty. They reviewed every hire Arthur had influenced, every lateral move he'd suggested, dozens of tiny changes, all laying the groundwork for his eventual return, maybe even a coup. Eleanor tapped her fingers against the table. "I underestimated him. That won't happen again." Riley leaned forward. "What if we take the offensive?" Eleanor smiled thinly. "Now you're thinking like me." The boardroom smelled like power and threat. Eleanor stood at the head of the table, dressed in slate gray, and Riley sat at her right hand. Symbolic, intentional, unmissable. The board's faces were unreadable. A few feigned politeness, others barely disguised their suspicion. "We've become reactive," Eleanor said, breaking the silence, "and that ends now." She slid printed packets across the table, compiled by Riley, filled with timelines, leak traces, and names. Everyone is a calculated move. "We are reestablishing executive integrity. This is a list of all personnel tied directly to unauthorized communications or structural manipulation under Arthur Blaine's prior influence." There were murmurs. One board member leaned forward. "Are you suggesting a purge?" "I'm suggesting clarity," Eleanor said, "and accountability." Riley watched the tension rise. This was the pivot point. If they pushed too hard, it would backfire. If they hesitated, the infection would spread again. So she spoke. "We don't propose chaos. We propose recalibration, promotion of high-trust, high-performance individuals, many of whom come from non-traditional tracks. The people who keep this company alive." "And who decides that?" Eleanor didn't answer. Riley did. "We do." That was the moment the board realized the game had changed, and that Riley wasn't just a bodyguard in a blazer. They met in Eleanor's office afterward, drinks in hand, scotch for her, tea for Riley. "That was a gamble," Eleanor said. "Did it pay off?" "We'll know in 72 hours. If there's no rebellion, then yes. If someone leaks again, then we hit harder." Eleanor smiled. "I taught you well. You didn't teach me to hit. You reminded me that I already knew how." Riley opened her laptop. There was a long list of staff recommendations on her screen. People from the warehouse, junior admins, overlooked analysts. She was building something piece by piece. "You're restructuring more than departments," Eleanor said. "You're building a loyalty engine." "I'm building a company that deserves it." "Then let's finish the job." The media push began 2 days later. Strategic stories were fed to friendly outlets. Profiles of Stratodyn's renewed focus on ethics, frontline innovation, leadership restructuring. Riley appeared in one piece, briefly, but it was enough to reignite public fascination. Social media picked it up. The viral catch moment resurfaced, but now it was framed differently. Not just a heroic act, but a launchpad for transformation. Stock rose 5 points. Employee engagement metrics ticked up. Internally, people were whispering a new nickname, the ground floor executive. Riley hated it, but she understood its power. She used it. She visited every regional hub over the next month. Quietly, unannounced. met with teams on night shifts, sat in cafeteria corners and listened. Word spread fast. The girl who caught the CEO was catching more than just falling people now. She was catching ideas, stories, cracks in the foundation. By the end of the quarter, employee turnover was down, internal promotions were up, and complaints had dropped by nearly half. When Riley walked back into HQ, she didn't feel like an outsider anymore. She felt like an anchor, and everyone knew it. Riley returned to her office and found a letter on her desk. Heavy envelope, handwritten address, inside a single page. To Ms. Riley Carter, you don't know me, but my mother works in your Florida distribution center. She says things feel different now, safer, like people are listening. She's never had a boss who cared about her life before. I wanted to say thank you. Jordan M. Riley read it twice. Then she folded the letter and placed it in the center drawer, right next to the anonymous threat she'd received weeks earlier. 2 notes, 2 worlds, 1 choice. Eleanor stepped in moments later. We've scheduled the vote, she said. The board is deciding whether to split Stratodyne's leadership into dual CEO roles. Riley blinked. You mean? Yes, I'm nominating you. Riley stood, heart racing. That's not... You've already been leading, Eleanor said. You've already earned it. Riley sat slowly. If I say yes, we change the company. Eleanor nodded. And if you say no, someone else will change it for you. Silence stretched between them. Then Riley extended her hand. Let's finish what we started. Eleanor took it, and Stratodyne, for the first time in decades, braced for something truly new. Riley sat on the rooftop terrace just outside the executive lounge, watching the morning traffic build far below. She held a fresh cup of coffee in both hands, like it might anchor her to the ground. Somewhere behind her, people in suits were preparing the building for the announcement. New placards, updated directories, memos with bullet points and buzzwords. She was about to become the co-CEO of Stratodyne. Her name would sit beside Eleanor's in every press release, every corporate document. 2 names, 2 legacies, one being written from scratch, the other trying to rewrite its ending. But even as she prepared for that, a hollow pit stirred in her chest. She didn't feel like a CEO. She felt like Riley Carter, warehouse worker, mistake maker, adrenaline junkie who caught a falling titan out of reflex and now stood on the edge of a cliff wondering if she could fly. She wasn't scared of the responsibility. She was scared of who she might become in the process. The elevator dinged behind her. Dev stepped out onto the terrace holding a brown paper bag. I figured if you're going to start the day by shaking up corporate history, you should at least eat something. She smiled faintly. Please tell me it's not another protein bar. He handed her a sandwich, bacon, egg, and too much hot sauce, just like you like it. She took a bite and winced, eyes watering. You never measure the hot sauce. I'm not the one leading a billion-dollar company. You can afford spice tolerance. He sat next to her. They didn't talk about the ceremony or the board or the cameras. They talked about old memories, cheap tacos, loading docks, stolen breaks between pallets. And when he finally left, Riley sat back, heart calmer. She didn't feel like a CEO, but maybe that's exactly why she needed to be one. When the internal announcement went live, it wasn't through a press conference or a formal memo. It was a live stream. Riley's idea. No stage, no suits. Just Eleanor and Riley, seated side by side in a plain conference room, behind them a Stratodyne banner, In front of them, a camera feed streaming to every regional office, warehouse, and hub. Stratodine has always believed in structure, Eleanor began, and sometimes structures must evolve. Riley continued, voice steady but honest. I didn't come from the boardroom. I came from the floor, the racks, the docks, and I'm here now because this company chose to believe in more than credentials. She paused. I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here to balance, to listen, to question what we've accepted as just the way it is. Because sometimes we need more than business sense. We need common sense. In the chat feed beside the live stream, emojis flew, clapping hands, fire symbols, even a few digital roses. Eleanor closed with a brief smile. As of today, Stratodine will be led jointly by two different minds and one shared mission. When the stream ended, there was a long silence in the room. Then Eleanor turned to Riley. Well? Riley exhaled. I didn't faint. High bar. The official press release hit later that afternoon. The media went wild. Headlines split between awe and cynicism. Some praised the innovation. Others called it a PR stunt. One outlet ran a headline, From Pallets to Power, Stratodyne's Cinderella CEO. Riley hated it, but she didn't correct them, because underneath the spin, one truth held. She'd made it to the top floor without ever pretending to be anything but herself. Despite the title change, Riley's routine didn't become more glamorous. If anything, her schedule became even more chaotic. Meetings started at 6 a.m. and bled into weekends. She was fielding questions from legal, marketing, production, and labor unions, often on the same day. The board demanded updates. Shareholders wanted stability. Eleanor gave her space, but that didn't mean the training wheels were still on. By the third week, Riley felt herself cracking. She skipped meals, missed calls, lost sleep, and then she made her first real mistake. During a conference with the logistics team, she approved a software migration without reading the vendor contract closely enough. It seemed like a simple switch until it locked Stratodine into a 3-year commitment with performance penalties for early exit. The fallout was immediate. Procurement was livid. Legal was scrambling. Eleanor called her in for an emergency review. Why didn't you flag this? She asked. I thought it was clean. You thought, Eleanor repeated. You guessed. That's not good enough anymore. Riley swallowed the sting. I'll fix it. No, you'll learn from it. We're eating the first year of that contract. But from now on, nothing moves until you fully understand it. Riley nodded. The lesson cut deep, but so did Eleanor's next words. You're still doing better than most. With the mistake behind her, Riley shifted focus. She needed to reconnect, not just with her team, but with herself. She asked Eleanor to give her one weekend free of emails and meetings. Instead of going home, she drove 6 hours to her sister's town. She hadn't seen Claire in over a year. Their last conversation had ended in a screaming match over their father's funeral arrangements. But now, standing awkwardly on the doorstep with a duffel bag and no script, Riley waited. Claire opened the door with a suspicious glance, arms crossed. You're alive. Barely. Claire stepped aside. Still like your coffee burnt. I like my coffee loud. They sat in silence for a while. Riley explained everything. Eleanor, the fall, the rise, the job. Claire listened, didn't interrupt. Finally, she said, So you caught a CEO, and now you run half the company. Basically. Claire laughed, full, genuine, and a little amazed. Of course you did. That night, they cooked cheap spaghetti and watched a movie they used to love as kids. Riley slept on the couch and woke up to the smell of pancakes. Before she left, Claire hugged her. "You might be big now, but you're still my idiot sister." "Always will be." The final test came on a rainy Monday morning. A fire broke out at the Dallas distribution center. Faulty wiring. Entire shelves of products are gone. 2 employees were injured. Insurance scrambling. Local media swarming. Riley was on a plane within an hour. She arrived soaked, exhausted, but alert. Eleanor stayed behind, on purpose. "This one's yours," she had said. Riley met with the injured workers first, sat in the hospital waiting room, brought food to their families. She refused to let PR dictate her response. Then she went to the site. The smell of smoke clung to everything. Employees looked stunned, managers stressed. She didn't give a speech. She rolled up her sleeves, helped clear rubble, asked direct questions, and when reporters came swarming, she gave one statement: "We failed our people here. We'll make it right, not with words, with repairs." The footage aired everywhere. That night, Eleanor called her. "You passed," she said. "Didn't know it was a test." "It always is." Riley hung up, watching the sunrise over a scorched building. She wasn't just a co-CEO. She was the face of a company learning how to listen. And she wasn't done yet. The Dallas site reopened 3 weeks later, ahead of schedule. New safety protocols, upgraded fire suppression systems, counseling services offered on-site. But what struck Riley most wasn't the rebuild. It was the pride on people's faces. They didn't feel rescued. They felt empowered. The following week, she returned to headquarters with something stronger than momentum. She carried trust. Eleanor met her in the lobby, watching from the mezzanine as Riley stepped through the sliding glass doors. For a moment, their eyes met, and neither said anything, but everything was understood. Back upstairs, Eleanor poured 2 drinks, coffee this time, black, hot, strong. "You made a name for yourself in Dallas," she said. "I didn't want a name, I wanted a result." "You got both." Riley sipped, eyes narrowed at the skyline. "It's starting to feel real." "It is." They sat in quiet for a long moment. Then Eleanor said, "I've been thinking of stepping back, taking a year, maybe more." Riley turned, stunned. "You've earned it," Eleanor added quickly, "and you've earned this company, but I won't disappear, not unless you want me to." "I don't," Riley said, "but you should do what you need." "I will. Just promise me something. Anything. Don't lose the fire or the floor. They're what make you dangerous in the best way." Riley smiled. "I won't forget." And she meant it. Her first month as sole acting CEO was all about pressure control, pacing the board's expectations, cooling Wall Street speculation, and managing the internal ripple effect of Eleanor's sabbatical. She spent late nights on Zoom with international teams, early mornings touring facilities. The warehouse advisory panel expanded. HR began building promotion pathways tied to frontline performance, not just executive referrals. But with power came shadows. Riley noticed it in the corners, those who smiled to her face but whispered behind glass. Some believed she was a temporary fix, a headline, a feel-good story meant to fade. She let them talk. And then she did what few CEOs dared to do. She invited scrutiny. Riley sent out a company-wide feedback form, open, anonymous, uncensored. "Tell me what we've missed. Tell me where we've failed." The submission portal nearly crashed. Thousands of responses, brutal honesty. Praise mixed with pain. She read every one. Then she wrote an internal report. Transparency, analysis, actions. She published it under her name. This is where we are. This is where we go, and I am responsible for both. It silenced most critics. It galvanized the rest. Meanwhile, the media ran another round of stories. Riley Carter, the CEO who listens. Some called it naive, others called it revolutionary. Riley didn't care. She wasn't here to play a role. She was here to rebuild the rules. 6 months passed. Riley stood in the middle of the South Side warehouse where everything began. Same concrete floors, same steel shelves, same smell of cardboard, sweat, and drive. But everything had changed. Today, they were celebrating. Not because of her title, not even because of the success, but because a worker-led task force had implemented a nationwide inventory system, one that cut waste, saved millions, and improved safety across the board. The idea had come from a dock worker in Ohio. Now it was policy. A banner hung across the break room. Innovation starts where the work happens. Riley watched the celebration from a distance. She didn't need to be the center of it. That wasn't her job anymore. Malik appeared beside her, holding 2 plastic cups of cheap soda. "Still allergic to champagne?" he asked. "I'm more into clarity." He clinked his cup against hers. "You did it." "No," Riley said. "We did it." The music started. The lights dimmed. And for the first time in a long while, Riley danced. Not to impress, not to distract, just because she could. Later that night, she sat in the loading dock, feet dangling off the edge. Eleanor called. "I saw the report," she said. "You rewrote our operating model." "No, I translated it into human." Eleanor chuckled. "So what's next?" Riley looked up at the stars, barely visible above the city haze. "Next, I keep showing up. I keep listening. I keep catching things before they fall." "And after that?" "I teach others to do the same." A long pause. Then Eleanor said quietly, "You've become exactly who we needed." Riley didn't respond. She didn't have to, because sometimes the truth doesn't need repeating. It just needs living.